Good evening and welcome back. Come closer to the quiet edge of the old story and let the night gather itself around you. Imagine that you are standing in a palace after midnight, when all the footsteps have faded from the halls and the fountains speak in whispers to the dark. The floors are cool beneath you. The pillars rise like pale trees in a moonless garden. Beyond the open curtains, the sky is deep and blue-black, and the first stars tremble over the sleeping roofs of an ancient city. Beside you, a little lamp burns in a bowl of bronze. Its flame is small, patient, and golden. It does not hurry. It leans when the air moves, then straightens again. It throws a soft circle of light over carved wood, over linen, over a hand resting at the edge of a bed. The flame is not bright enough to conquer the darkness. It only keeps company with it. This is the kind of light in which some stories wish to be told. Not in the hard glare of noon, not in the noise of markets or the triumph of trumpets, but here, where the walls remember sighs, where the silks breathe with the wind, where the heart grows honest because there is no one left to impress. Tonight's story is about a girl who walked through the dark for love. Her name was Psyche. In the old Greek tongue, the name Psyche carries the feeling of soul, breath, and butterfly. It is a word that seems almost too delicate to hold a life, and yet it does. A breath can cross a threshold, a soul can descend into shadow and return. A butterfly can be made of light and still survive the long sleep of the chrysalis. The tale comes to us most fully through an ancient Roman writer named Apuleius, who told it in Latin as the story of Cupid and Psyche. But the gods in it are older than any single telling. Cupid is Eros, the winged power of desire. Venus is Aphrodite, the sea-born goddess of beauty, longing, and the dangerous sweetness that can unmake kings. Jupiter is Zeus, the lord of the bright sky. The names change as languages change, but the night behind the story remains the same. So rest now at the threshold of the palace. Let the little lamp burn, let the curtains move slowly, let the world outside become far away. We begin not with a battle, and not with a kingdom falling, but with beauty, which can be its own kind of loneliness. There was once a king and queen who had 3 daughters. The eldest was admired for her dignity, the second for her grace, and the youngest for a beauty that seemed to trouble the air around her. This youngest child was Psyche. When she was little, people smiled at her as people smile at morning. When she grew, they stopped smiling so easily. They stared. They fell silent. They spoke about her when she had left the room, and their voices dropped as if they were speaking of a temple. Her beauty was not merely pleasing, it was unsettling. Travelers who came to her father's city went home speaking of her. Sailors carried rumors of her face across the sea. Shepherds repeated the tale on hillsides. Merchants, who knew the value of purple cloth and cedar oil and hammered gold, shook their heads and said that no price could be named for such a sight. Soon the rumor became worship. Men and women came from neighboring lands not to bring petitions to the gods, but to stand below the palace balconies in hope that Psyche might pass. They scattered flowers where her feet had been. They burned incense in the streets. They lifted their hands as if she were not a mortal girl, but Aphrodite herself, risen from the foam and walking among them in human form. This was not Psyche's doing. She had not asked for altars, she had not asked for hymns, she had not stolen any offering from the sea-born goddess. Yet the world often wounds the innocent by loving them wrongly. The more the people adored her, the farther away she felt from them. They called her divine, and so they forgot that she could be lonely. They praised her face, and did not ask after her heart. Her two sisters, less adored and therefore more free, were married to princes from neighboring realms. Their weddings filled the palace with music, lamps, and laughter. Psyche watched them go in embroidered veils, surrounded by women singing blessings. She kissed them farewell and smiled as she was expected to smile. But when the gates closed and the last procession disappeared down the road, she returned to her chamber and sat in the quiet. Suitors came for her, of course. At first they came in great number. They brought jewels, horses, carved ivory, promises of cities, promises of poems, promises of never-ending devotion. Yet when they stood before her, something failed in them. They were not warmed by her beauty, they were overwhelmed by it. They looked at her as men look at a statue in a shrine, too sacred to touch and too distant to love. One by one they departed. Some said she was beyond them, some said no mortal marriage could contain her, some simply bowed, pale and wordless, and backed away. Thus Psyche, who was praised by everyone, was chosen by no one. In the temple of Aphrodite the incense grew thin. This is how a goddess may learn that mortals have turned their eyes elsewhere. The garlands fade first. Then the prayers come late. Then the sailors who once promised silver doves for safe passage forget the name they cried during the storm. Aphrodite was not a gentle power to neglect. She had been born from the sea's shining violence, and all creatures who desired, from gods to shepherds, moved somewhere within her dominion. When she heard that a mortal girl was receiving honors meant for her, Aphrodite's beauty darkened with anger. It was not simply vanity, though vanity was there. It was the outrage of a goddess whose ancient place had been confused by human folly. Mortals had looked at Psyche and mistaken the reflection for the source. They had seen a candle and forgotten the dawn. Aphrodite called her son. He came as Eros, whom the Romans would call Cupid. Not merely a laughing child with a toy bow, though later painters would make him small and sweet. Eros was older and stranger than that. He was desire with wings. He was the invisible wound that opens between one heart and another. He carried arrows that could make the wise foolish, the proud humble, and the guarded suddenly helpless before a face, a voice, a memory, a name. Aphrodite spoke to him of Psyche. "Punish this mortal girl," she said, or so the old tale tells us. "Make her fall in love with something low, something unworthy, something that will humiliate the worshippers who have raised her too high. Let her beauty become the door to her sorrow." Eros listened. Perhaps he smiled at first, thinking the task simple. He had troubled gods before. He had made queens restless, heroes reckless, old men young with longing and young girls ancient with grief. What was one mortal princess to him? But when he came to Psyche, the night changed. We may imagine him entering unseen through a high window, while Psyche slept beneath pale covers, one hand near her cheek, her dark lashes resting like shadows. The lamp beside her burned low. The room was scented faintly with myrrh and rose leaves. Outside, the city praised her in dreams, but inside the chamber she looked very young, very human, and very alone. Eros bent near with his arrow. The flame moved. Perhaps his own hand trembled. Perhaps the point touched him. Perhaps the wound came not from metal, but from seeing at last the soul beneath the beauty, the solitude beneath the praise. In many tellings, he wounds himself with his own arrow and falls in love with Psyche. However we imagine it, the result is the same. The god who was sent to make her suffer found himself bound to her. Aphrodite had asked for punishment. Eros chose secrecy. Still, Psyche's sorrow did not lift at once. In her father's palace, the silence around her deepened. No wedding song came. No bridegroom stood beside her. The king watched his youngest daughter move through marble halls as if she were a lamp protected from every wind and yet slowly running out of oil. At last, with grief in his heart, he went to seek the oracle of Apollo. The oracle in the ancient world was not a comforting voice. It did not speak as a friend speaks across a table. It came through smoke, laurel, stone, and terror. It answered in words that seemed to open beneath the feet. The king asked why no husband came for Psyche, and what fate awaited her. The answer was cruel in shape, though destiny often wears masks that the heart cannot understand. Psyche was to be dressed as a bride, taken to the top of a lonely mountain and left there. Her husband, the oracle said, would not be a mortal man. He would be something feared by gods and men, a winged power before whom even Zeus might tremble. The king returned with the words like ashes in his mouth. When the palace learned the prophecy, the rooms filled not with wedding music but with mourning. The queen tore at her veil, the servants wept in corners. The city that had worshipped Psyche now watched in dread as its living idol was prepared for sacrifice. She was bathed and perfumed. Her hair was braided. A bridal veil was placed over her face. Bracelets circled her wrists. Flowers were woven for her, though they looked more like funeral flowers now. Psyche herself was calm in the way a person may become calm when fear has passed beyond crying. She comforted her parents, though she was the one being led away. She told them that the anger of Aphrodite had come because mortals had worshipped what should never have been worshipped. She did not accuse them. She did not accuse the city. She simply walked. The procession climbed toward the mountain. Below, the city receded into blue distance. The road narrowed. The songs became sobs. Torches bent in the wind, though it was day. At the summit they left her as the oracle commanded. Her family could not remain. That is one of the most painful laws in old stories. Those who love us sometimes must turn back before the path becomes ours alone. Psyche stood on the mountain in her bridal veil, abandoned to the sky. The wind moved around her. Far below, birds turned over the valleys. The light began to soften. She waited for the monster she had been promised. She waited for claws, for thunder, for the sound of wings large enough to darken the sun. But nothing came in violence. Instead, the west wind arrived. His name was Zephyrus, the gentlest of the winds, the breath of spring, the one who can move through blossoms without breaking them. He lifted Psyche as softly as a mother lifting a sleeping child. Her veil rose around her. The mountain fell away. She did not tumble. She did not fall. She was carried. Down through the evening air she drifted, over rocks and small trees, over ravines where shadows had begun to gather, until Zephyrus laid her in a valley hidden from the roads of men. There the grass was deep and cool. The air was sweet with flowers. A stream moved nearby, speaking to stones in a voice that had never learned fear. Before Psyche stood a palace. No mortal hand seemed to have made it. Its columns shone with ivory and gold. Its doors were carved with scenes so delicate they seemed ready to move. The floors reflected the sky. The walls held gems that gave back the last light of sunset in green, blue, and rose. Yet the palace did not feel proud. It felt waiting, as if it had been prepared for one guest only, and had held its breath until she arrived. Psyche crossed the threshold. A voice welcomed her, though no body appeared. "Do not be afraid," it said. "All this is yours." Invisible servants attended her. They brought water warm to the perfect kindness. They placed food before her, fruits bright as little moons, bread still fragrant from unseen ovens, wine dark and mild. Music came from nowhere and everywhere, strings touched by hands she could not see. When she entered a chamber, lamps lit themselves. When she grew tired, a bed received her with linen soft as cloud. All day she wandered the palace in wonder. She touched the carved doors, she listened at fountains, she looked out from balconies over a valley so hidden it might have belonged to a dream beneath the world. No face appeared, no footstep answered hers, yet she was not neglected. Every need was met before she spoke it. When night came, her husband came to her. He arrived in darkness. She did not see him. She heard the low movement of air, felt the bed yield beside her, and then a voice, tender and close. It was not the voice of a monster. It was not harsh, not triumphant, not hungry for her fear. It spoke as though it had known loneliness too. "Psyche," he said, "you are safe." He asked only one thing. She must never try to see his face. She might have all the palace, all the music, all the tenderness he could offer. But she must trust him in the dark. This request was strange, and it was heavy. But Psyche had been left on a mountain for a dreadful bridegroom, and had found instead a hidden house of mercy. The darkness around him did not feel empty. It felt like a veil over something sacred. So she agreed. Night after night he came. Night after night he spoke gently with her. In the darkness, where the eyes could not rule, Psyche began to know him by other things. The warmth of his hand, the patience in his silence, the way he listened when she spoke of her childhood, of her sisters, of the ache of being admired and never understood. He did not praise her face as the world had done. He asked what she feared. He asked what she remembered. He told her that she was not a statue, not an altar, not a rumor passing from mouth to mouth. She was Psyche. In time she loved him. Yet love in darkness is still darkness. It may be sweet, but the mind has its own hunger. By day the palace seemed almost too beautiful. By night, the unseen husband seemed almost too kind. Between wonder and uncertainty, Psyche's heart moved like the little flame of a lamp when a door is opened far away. She began to miss her family. From the mountain, her parents and sisters believed her dead or lost to a fate worse than death. Psyche imagined her mother at the window. She imagined her father returning again and again to the oracle's words. She imagined her sisters mourning her, and because she had always been gentle, she forgot that grief and envy can sometimes sleep in the same house. She asked her husband if her sisters might come. In the darkness, he was silent for a long time. At last he said that she was asking for sorrow. He told her that her sisters would not understand. They would bring questions sharp as little knives. They would urge her to look where she had promised not to look. He did not forbid her with cruelty. He warned her with grief. But Psyche wept, and longing made her persistent. She had been worshipped by strangers, abandoned by prophecy, carried by wind, and hidden in a palace. She wished for one familiar voice, only one. So he consented. Zephyrus carried the sisters down from the mountain, as he had carried Psyche. They arrived expecting to find bones, ashes, or some sign of divine punishment. Instead, they found their youngest sister alive, clothed in beauty, standing before a palace more splendid than any royal house they had ever seen. At first they embraced her. They cried out in astonishment. They touched her arms to prove she was real. Psyche, innocent in her joy, led them through the palace. She showed them the shining floors, the golden ceilings, the rooms full of treasures, the tables that filled themselves, the invisible servants who answered every wish. She gave them jewels and rich garments. She told them she was happy, but happiness can be hard for the unhappy to forgive. The sisters looked and looked. Their eyes measured what they could not possess. They remembered their own husbands, older perhaps, ordinary perhaps, kings or princes, with tempers and debts and human limitations. They remembered that Psyche had been mourned as doomed, and yet here she was, richer than any of them, loved by a mysterious lord, mistress of a palace no mortal architect could have imagined. Envy entered softly. It did not announce itself. It dressed itself as concern. "Who is your husband?" they asked. Psyche faltered. She had never seen him. She gave one answer, then another. Perhaps he was young. Perhaps he was a hunter. Perhaps he was away. The sisters heard the uncertainty. They exchanged glances. When they returned to their own homes, the palace remained in their minds like a jewel under the skin. They could not rest. They spoke to one another and fed the bitterness until it became a plan. They would return. They would save Psyche, they told themselves. They would uncover the truth. Beneath these noble words, another desire moved, to break what they could not bear to bless. Again Psyche begged to see them. Again her husband warned her. Again she wept, and again he yielded. This time the sisters came prepared. They embraced her with careful tenderness. They asked about her health, her sleep, her happiness. Then slowly, as the day lowered, they began to darken the air. "How strange," they said, "that your husband hides. How strange that he comes only when no lamp is burning. Did not the oracle speak of a dreadful being? What if he is kind only until the time is right? What if he is a serpent, a devourer, a thing ashamed of its own form?" Psyche tried to resist them. She remembered the tenderness of the night voice. She remembered the hands that had never harmed her. She remembered laughter in darkness and comfort, and the feeling that someone had seen the soul in her. But doubt does not need to defeat love all at once. It only needs a place to sit. Her sisters gave her a plan. "Hide a lamp," they said. "Hide a sharp knife as well, though the story need not dwell on that dark advice. When he sleeps, light the lamp. Look at him. If he is what we fear, save yourself. If he is not, then what harm is there in knowing? What harm is there in knowing?" So often the heart is trapped by that small sentence. After they left, the palace seemed changed. The fountain still sang, but their music felt distant. The invisible servant still attended her, but she wondered what eyes might be watching. The sunset entered the rooms like diluted blood, then faded into violet, then into the deep blue of night. Psyche prepared the lamp. She placed it where she could reach it. She waited with her breath held in her chest. When her husband came, his voice was as gentle as ever, and this gentleness hurt her. He spoke to her of ordinary things, of the valley wind, of her weariness, of the sadness he sensed but did not force her to explain. She answered softly. Shame moved in her, but fear moved beside it. At last he slept. The palace was utterly still. Psyche rose. This is the moment at the heart of the story, and we should enter it quietly. Not as judges, not as spectators hungry for punishment. Psyche was young. She had been given a command without an explanation, loved without a face, warned without proof, and frightened by the only family voices she knew. Trust is a sacred thing, but it is not simple. Curiosity may be a fault, but it may also be the soul reaching for truth. Her hand found the lamp. The wick caught. A small flame opened, its gold unfolded over the bed, and Psyche saw him. Not a monster, not a serpent, not a cruel hidden thing. She saw Eros, the god of love, asleep beside her. Wings rested at his shoulders, folded like moonlit clouds. His hair shone softly. His bow and arrows lay near, the instruments by which gods and mortals were wounded into longing. His face was peaceful, and because he was asleep, he looked almost vulnerable. Psyche's fear broke apart. In its place came wonder, love, and a sorrow so sharp it had no sound. She understood that she had been loved by the very power of love. She understood that her sisters had lied, or feared, or both. She understood that the darkness had not hidden a monster, but a god who had asked to be trusted. Her hand trembled. A drop of warm oil slipped from the lamp and fell onto Eros's shoulder. He woke. There was no roar. No thunder split the palace. No blade flashed. Only the terrible quiet of trust broken. Eros looked at Psyche, and the light between them was not the light he had chosen, it was the light she had stolen. He saw the lamp. He saw her tears. He saw fear still dying in her face, and love rising too late to save the night. Poor Psyche, he said, or perhaps he said nothing at first. The old tale gives him grief, and grief is often larger than speech. He reminded her that he had disobeyed Aphrodite for her. He had hidden her, cherished her, made a world for her in secret. He had asked for trust, and she had answered with suspicion. Then he rose. Love cannot live with suspicion, he told her in the Roman telling, or words close to that shadow. Where there is no trust, love flies away. His wings opened. Psyche reached for him, but the lamp shook in her hand, and the room was already changing. The invisible servants were silent. The music had stopped. The palace seemed to hold its breath as Eros lifted into the dark. He was gone. Then the enchantment loosened. Some tellings say the palace vanished. Some let it remain but empty, which may be sadder. Psyche found herself alone with the lamp, the smell of oil, the fading warmth of the bed, and the knowledge that one small act can open a chasm beneath an entire life. She went out into the night to search for him. The world beyond the hidden valley was vast. Psyche wandered without crown, without attendants, without the certainty that had once surrounded her like a veil. She went through fields silvered by dawn, through towns where no one knew her, along rivers that carried leaves and reflected a sky too wide for comfort. The beauty for which she had been worshipped did not help her now. Dust touched her feet. Wind loosened her hair. Hunger made her mortal again. She came first, in some tellings, to places sacred to other goddesses. She saw a temple where stalks of grain lay scattered in disorder, and because grief had not made her careless, she gathered them properly and set the offerings in order. This was the domain of Demeter, or Ceres in Roman speech, the mother of the harvest. Demeter pitied her, but could not shelter her from Aphrodite's anger. Psyche went on. She found another shrine, perhaps of Hera, queenly and solemn, called Juno by the Romans. There too she humbled herself. There too pity came, but not protection. The gods have their boundaries. Even compassion among immortals moves through laws older than desire. At last Psyche understood that she could not hide from Aphrodite. If love had been lost through her own hand, she would not recover it by running forever. She turned toward the goddess who hated her. Aphrodite received her with a smile more dangerous than anger. So, the goddess said, the wandering servant comes at last. Perhaps you seek your husband. Perhaps you remember now whose power you offended. Psyche bowed her head. Aphrodite saw the dust, the exhaustion, the mortal fragility of the girl who had once been praised as her rival. Yet pity did not soften her. She called attendants, whose names in the Latin tale mean habits of the soul's pain, concern and sorrow, and they handled Psyche roughly in spirit, if not in the kind of detail we need to imagine too clearly tonight. Aphrodite mocked her, tested her, and spoke of Eros lying wounded from the lamp's oil, hidden away from his mother and from the world. If Psyche wanted him, Aphrodite said, she must prove herself useful. The first task was a mountain of seeds. Aphrodite poured before her a great confused heap: wheat, barley, millet, lentils, poppy seed, chickpeas, beans, and tiny grains mixed beyond counting. Before night, Psyche must sort each kind into its own pile. If she failed, the goddess would know what she was worth. Then Aphrodite left her. Psyche sat before the impossible heap. It is a humble image, and perhaps that is why it is so powerful. Not a monster, not a battlefield, not a riddle shouted from a cliff, only seeds. Thousands upon thousands of little lives all mixed together, each requiring patience, attention, and time no mortal hands could possess. Grief often feels like this, a heap of small things too numerous to order: memories, regrets, hopes, fears, apologies, each one tiny, each one necessary, all tangled before evening. Psyche bowed her head and wept. Then the ants came, small, dark, patient creatures of the earth. They emerged from cracks and roots. Perhaps they had seen her sorrow. Perhaps Eros, though wounded, still moved the world toward her in secret. Perhaps the earth itself took pity on the soul. In a whispering multitude, the ants began to work. Grain by grain, seed by seed, they separated the heap, wheat with wheat, barley with barley, lentils with lentils. Poppy seed, like dark dust, gathered in its place. By the time Aphrodite returned, the task was done. The goddess was not pleased. Those who demand the impossible are often angered when mercy answers. She gave Psyche coarse bread and a harder command. Beyond a river, Aphrodite said, there grazed rams with golden fleece. Their wool shone like the sun caught in thread. Psyche was to bring back some of that fleece. The task sounded beautiful, but beauty in myth often has teeth. The rams were fierce beneath the heat of noon, maddened by the sun, dangerous to approach. Psyche went to the river. The day was bright, but not kindly bright. It was the kind of brightness that leaves no shadow to rest in. Across the water, she saw the golden creatures moving among the reeds, their backs flashing, their horns lowered and lifted. The air around them seemed hot with force. Psyche, weary from sorrow and obedience, thought of stepping into the river and letting the current take her. Not because she wished for drama, but because despair sometimes offers itself as rest. Yet before she could surrender, a reed beside the water spoke. "Do not go to them now," it whispered. The reed had learned patience from standing between earth and water. It told her to wait until the day cooled, until the rams grew calm and slept in the shade. Then she should not touch them at all. She should gather the golden wool caught on thorn bushes and low branches where the animals had passed. Psyche listened. She sat by the water while the sun moved slowly downward. The fierce light softened. The rams, no longer burning with noon, grew quiet. When they slept, Psyche crossed carefully and gathered shining strands from the thorns. She did not conquer the beasts. She did not prove strength by violence. She survived by waiting, listening, and taking only what could be taken without harm. She brought the fleece to Aphrodite. Again, the goddess narrowed her eyes. Again she saw not Psyche's obedience, but the shape of unseen help. The third task rose higher and darker. Aphrodite gave Psyche a crystal vessel and commanded her to fill it with water from a stream that fed the rivers of the underworld. In the old imagination, these waters belonged near the Styx, the dread river by which even gods swore binding oaths. The source fell from a high and terrible place, guarded by steep rocks and watchful powers. The water was not a gentle spring where one might kneel with a cup. It was remote, cold, and perilous, a black thread of eternity running where mortal hands could not reach. Psyche climbed. The path tore at her sandals. The air thinned. Stone rose on either side. She heard the water before she saw it, a sound like speech too ancient to understand. When she came near, the cliffs leaned over her, and serpents or dragons of the old tale kept watch in the rocks. Their presence need not be pictured sharply. It is enough to feel the warning in the place, the sense that some thresholds are not crossed by force. Psyche held the vessel and knew she could not fill it. Then an eagle came. It was the eagle of Zeus, or a servant of his bright authority, winged with the strength of high weather. Perhaps Eros had appealed silently to the sky. Perhaps Zeus, watching from far above, had grown curious about the mortal soul who kept moving through impossible commands. The eagle took the vessel in its talons, rose through the dangerous air, passed where Psyche could not pass, and filled it from the black water's source. When the bird returned the vessel, it was heavy with the chill of oath and underworld river. Psyche carried it back. Aphrodite saw that the third task too had been completed. Now the goddess chose a command that seemed to leave no opening for help. "Take this box," she said. It was small, closed, and beautiful in a severe way. Psyche was to go down to the house of Hades and ask Persephone, queen of the underworld, to place within the box a portion of her beauty. Aphrodite claimed that tending her wounded son had diminished her own radiance, and she required beauty from the queen below. This was a task beyond task. Sorting seeds belonged to the earth, gathering fleece belonged to the fields, fetching water belonged to the cliffs and sky. But this command led beneath all roads to the country from which mortals do not return. Psyche took the box. She did not rage. She did not boast. By now, sorrow had burned away many illusions. She knew that she was being sent where human hope becomes thin. She walked until she saw a high tower, and in her exhaustion she thought again of ending the struggle. If the underworld wanted her, perhaps she could simply fall toward it. But the tower spoke. In ancient stories, help may come from ants, reeds, eagles, and stones. The world is not mute when the soul is truly at the edge. The tower told Psyche that there was a path to the underworld, and that she must not throw her life away in haste. It gave instructions, precise and strange, the way old wisdom often is. She must take 2 coins for the ferryman, 1 for the passage down and 1 for the return. She must take 2 barley cakes soaked in honey for the hound who guarded the gates. She must ignore certain pleas along the road, a lame man with a burden, a dead man needing help in the river, women weaving who would ask for her hand. These images may sound unkind, but in the logic of the descent they are warnings. The soul going below must not spend itself at every voice. Compassion without discernment can become another door into captivity. When she reached Persephone, the tower said, she must not sit on a soft seat or eat a rich banquet. She must sit on the ground or a low place, eat only coarse bread, ask humbly for the gift, receive the box, and return without opening it. Return without opening it. Again, the old story placed a sealed mystery in Psyche's hands. She obeyed. With coins and cakes, Psyche found the hidden way down. The road to the underworld was not like roads under the sun. It did not invite, it received. The air cooled, the colors thinned, sounds became careful. Above her the world of birds and leaves withdrew. Before her lay the shadowed kingdom where Hades ruled and Persephone sat beside him, half remembered as spring's daughter, half enthroned as queen of the dead. At the river the ferryman took his coin. The boat moved over dark water. It did not splash like a lively stream, it slid. On the banks shapes waited, not in horror, but in the hush of all things that have finished speaking. Psyche held the box close. She remembered the tower's warnings. When voices called to her, she did not answer. When need appeared before her in forms designed to delay her, she lowered her eyes and continued. This was not cruelty. It was obedience to a path narrow as breath. At the gate, the guardian hound received the honeyed cake and let her pass. So Psyche came before Persephone. Imagine the queen of the underworld, not as a terror, but as a deep winter kindness. She had been a maiden in a meadow once. She had known flowers, sunlight, and the cry of a mother searching. She had also learned the weight of a throne in the dark. Her beauty was not Aphrodite's sea-bright radiance. It was the beauty of pomegranate seeds, of snow over fields, of roots waiting unseen, of lamps burning for those who will not return by morning. Psyche did as she had been told. She refused the softness that might bind her. She ate the plain bread. She spoke humbly. Persephone placed something in the box, or allowed the box to be filled with the mystery requested. Psyche thanked her and turned back. The return was long. Again the ferryman, again the dark water, again the gate, the cake, the road rising toward the living air. Psyche did not stop for the voices. She did not let the underworld keep her by pity, fatigue, or forgetfulness. Step by step, she came upward. At last she felt the upper world near. Perhaps there was a change in the air. Perhaps the darkness ahead became grey, then silver. Perhaps she heard wind in grasses or smelled dust warmed by the sun. She had done what no mortal bride should have had to do. She had gone below and returned with the sealed gift of Persephone in her hands. Then thought came to her. It was not a wicked thought. That is why it was dangerous. She thought of Eros. She thought of his wounded shoulder, of the grief in his face when the lamp revealed him, of the distance that still lay between them. She was worn from wandering, humbled by tasks, dimmed by sorrow and dust. If the box held beauty, perhaps she might take only a little. Not for vanity, she told herself, but for love. to stand before him not as a ruined wanderer, but as one made worthy again. So Psyche opened the box. There was no beauty inside, or rather not beauty meant for mortal handling. A deep sleep rose from it, a sleep heavy as the underworld's own breath. It poured over Psyche, soft and irresistible. Her limbs weakened. The light withdrew. She fell beside the road, not harmed, not torn away, but covered in a stillness like winter over a field. The old tale calls it a sleep of death, but tonight we can understand it gently. It was the kind of sleep that comes when the soul has gone too far without rest, when every task has been completed and yet one small longing breaks the final command. Psyche lay as if all her grief had become weight. The box rested open. The world went quiet around her. Eros came. He had been wounded, but love is not easily kept behind doors. Whether he escaped from his mother's chamber or rose from his own pain, he flew in search of Psyche. Perhaps he had watched over her unseen. Perhaps each helper had been a sign that his love, though grieved, had not wholly abandoned her. Now he found her beside the road, covered in the enchanted sleep. For a moment he saw the whole pattern, the lamp, the wandering, the tasks, the descent, the opened box. He saw not only her failure, but her endurance. He saw the mortal girl who had crossed the world for him, who had sorted grief seed by seed, waited beside danger, climbed toward black water, and walked the road of the dead. Eros did not turn away. He knelt beside her. With a touch delicate as the first wingbeat of dawn, he gathered the sleep from her face and body and returned it to the box. Then he woke her. Psyche opened her eyes. This time there was light, and he did not flee from being seen. The story could end there in the arms beside the road, but myths often require the heavens to admit what the heart already knows. Eros went to Zeus. He asked the Lord of the gods to settle what secrecy and anger had broken. Zeus, who had seen many forms of desire disturb the world, looked upon this love and chose order over further sorrow. He summoned the gods. Aphrodite came too, still proud, still sea-bright, still not easily softened. But even she could not resist forever the decree of Zeus and the strange completion of the tale. Psyche had not stolen divinity by beauty. She had been refined by suffering, obedience, mistake, and devotion. She had been worshipped wrongly as a goddess, then made low as a servant, then raised not because mortals praised her, but because love itself had claimed her. Zeus gave Psyche ambrosia, the food or drink of the immortals. Drink this, he said, and be deathless. So Psyche, the mortal soul, became immortal. The girl left on the mountain entered the company of gods. Eros took her openly as his wife. No more hidden nights, no more palace of secrecy, no more love that must vanish at the approach of a lamp. In time, a child was born to them. Her name was Hedon in Greek, pleasure. In the Roman telling, voluptas. It is a fitting ending and a tender one. Not pleasure as mere indulgence, not the restless hunger that consumes itself, but the deep pleasure born when love and soul are reconciled after trial. The sweetness that comes after fear has passed, the ease that enters a room where truth no longer needs to hide. And now the palace of the beginning returns to us. The lamp is still burning. Its flame is lower than before. The halls are quiet. Somewhere beyond the curtains, the ancient city sleeps under a sky that has watched gods, mortals, weddings, griefs, vows, and mistakes repeat themselves like waves. Think of Psyche not only as a princess, but as the soul in its passage through love. At first, she is admired but unknown. Many souls begin that way, seen from the outside, praised for some surface, judged by beauty, skill, strength, usefulness, charm, and yet not truly met. The world may kneel before an image and still fail to touch the living heart within it. Then she is sent to the mountain. Every soul has some mountain, a place where others can accompany us only so far, a place where the songs of the city fade behind us, and we stand in the wind waiting for what we cannot understand. The oracle sounds cruel because it speaks from beyond our comfort, yet the mountain is not the end. Sometimes the wind that arrives there is gentle. Then comes the hidden palace, a season of gift, of wonder, of being cared for in ways that cannot be explained. Yet even in blessing, the soul may struggle with uncertainty. We want to see. We want to name. We want the face behind the kindness, the reason beneath the command, the proof that love is not a dream that will vanish at dawn. Then come the sisters, the voices of doubt. They may be actual people, or they may be inner voices dressed in familiar clothes. They ask questions that sound reasonable. They tell us that trust is foolish, that mystery is danger, that what we cannot see must be against us. Sometimes they are wrong. Sometimes they speak from old wounds. Sometimes they do not know they are carrying envy in the name of care. Then the lamp is lit. We all have our lamp moments, times when fear makes us grasp for certainty too quickly, times when we violate the tenderness of a mystery because we cannot bear not knowing. The story does not say that Psyche is evil. It says she is human. It says that love can be wounded by mistrust, and that even a small flame can reveal more than the hand is ready to hold. Then love flies away. This is not the end either, though it feels like one. The soul begins to walk. It learns that longing is not passive. It learns that apology may require roads, labor, humility, and descent. Psyche cannot simply call Eros back to the bed. She must become capable of the love she has lost. The tasks of Aphrodite are cruel, but they teach hidden wisdom. Sort the seeds. Separate what is mixed within you. Name grief as grief, fear as fear, love as love, envy as envy, hope as hope. Do not demand that the whole heap become clear at once. Let the ants come. Let small patient forces help. Healing is often done grain by grain. Gather the golden fleece. Do not rush the fierce rams at noon. Do not mistake courage for throwing yourself into danger when wisdom asks you to wait. Let the heat pass. Let anger sleep. Take what is needed from the thorns after the storm of force has gone quiet. Fetch the black water. Know when the height is beyond you. Let the eagle carry what your hands cannot reach. Not every task is solved by effort. Some require help from above, from friendship, from grace, from a strength that can move where we cannot. Descend to Persephone. Carry coins, carry cakes. Respect the thresholds. Do not be captured by every plea on the road. When the soul goes into deep shadow, it must travel carefully. It must know when to answer and when to continue. It must receive the Dark Queen's gift and return. Do not open the box. And yet, Psyche opens it. Even near the end, she is still Psyche, still the soul, still tender, still capable of confusing love with the wish to be made perfect before being seen. This too is familiar. We think, if I can make myself more beautiful, more worthy, less tired, less marked by the road, then love will return. But Eros returns not because she has borrowed beauty from Persephone. He returns and finds her in the very place where borrowed beauty has failed. He wakes her as she is. That is the mercy at the center of the tale. The soul is not saved by never making mistakes. Psyche makes mistakes. She doubts. She breaks trust. She opens what she was told to keep closed. But she also loves, searches, works, listens, descends, returns, and endures. The story grants her immortality not as a prize for flawlessness, but as a recognition of what the soul becomes when it passes through love's darkness without giving up. Outside the palace, the night has grown deeper. The lamp beside you is almost spent. Its flame bends low, a small gold petal trembling above the oil. The marble no longer feels cold. The curtains move more slowly now. The old gods withdraw into the distance. Aphrodite to her bright sea. Eros to his secret bow. Persephone to her shadowed throne. Zeus to the high weather. Psyche remains nearer, because the soul is always near. Let the story settle softly. You do not need to solve it tonight. You do not need to decide whether Psyche should have trusted more, or Eros should have explained more, or Aphrodite should have forgiven sooner. Myths are not locks with one key. They are lamps. They show different things depending on where we stand. For now, see only this: a mortal girl on a mountain, lifted by a gentle wind. A hidden palace, a lamp trembling in a hand, a god wounded but not emptied of love, a woman walking roads of dust, ants beneath her fingers, reeds whispering by water, an eagle against the high cold sky, a queen in the underworld placing silence into a box, asleep beside the road, a touch that wakes, a cup of immortality, a child named pleasure. And after all of it, the flame grows quiet. The little lamp has done enough. It has kept company with the dark. It has shown beauty and sorrow, error and forgiveness, the face of love and the face of the soul. Now it lowers itself gently, as all lamps must. Let your own breath be easy. Let the palace fade. Let Psyche walk no farther tonight. The mountain is behind her. The road is behind her. The underworld is behind her. Eros has found her. The gods have spoken. The child of love and soul sleeps somewhere in a cradle of soft light. Before the lamp goes out completely, let it hold the story a little longer, as a hand might hold a letter before folding it away. There is another way to listen to Psyche's first loneliness. She was surrounded by people, yet separated from them by the very admiration they offered. To be praised without being known is a cold kind of crown. The city thought it loved her, but it loved an image made from distance. The people did not ask whether she slept well, whether she feared the future, whether she laughed easily with her sisters when no one was watching. They did not ask what song she liked or what dreams came to her before dawn. They looked upward and called that devotion. Aphrodite's anger, then, is not only the anger of a jealous goddess. It is the anger of the sacred order disturbed. Beauty had been taken from its source and placed on a mortal girl like a burden. Psyche became a mirror in which others worshipped their own hunger. No wonder the tale begins with offerings misplaced. No wonder it must pass through correction, loss, and descent before beauty can become humane again. When the oracle speaks, the world seems to become cruel. Yet the oracle also tears away the false worship. The city cannot keep Psyche forever as its ornament. Her parents cannot hide her in the palace, hoping that admiration will become marriage by itself. The mountain is terrible, but it is also a release from the gaze of thousands. At the top, she is no longer a spectacle. She is a single soul under the open sky. Listen to the softness of Zephyrus in that moment. The prophecy has prepared us for dread. The procession has prepared us for sacrifice. The mountain has prepared us for an ending. Then comes the west wind, tender and almost soundless. This is one of the quietest mercies in myth. Help does not always arrive with explanation. Sometimes it arrives as a change in pressure, as air beneath the body, as the impossible fact that you are not falling though the ground has disappeared. The enchanted palace is full of gifts, but it is also a test of receiving. Psyche has known what it is to be looked at. Now she must learn what it is to be cared for without spectacle. Invisible servants bring food, music comes without musicians. Doors open, baths steam, beds wait. The palace asks nothing of her performance. No crowd stands below. No priest burns incense to her face. In that hidden valley, beauty is not demanded from her. For the first time, perhaps, she is allowed to be tired. And yet even mercy can frighten the soul when it cannot see the giver. This is why the unseen husband matters. Eros asks for trust in a form that Psyche can barely understand. He does not say, "I am a god, and you must obey." He does not display his wings and command awe. He comes at night, voice first, tenderness first, presence first. He asks to be known by fidelity before he is known by sight. To the modern heart, this may feel unfair, and perhaps it is. Myth does not always give us comfortable arrangements. It gives us living tensions. Love needs trust. Trust needs truth. Mystery can protect, and mystery can wound. So Psyche's happiness is real, and her unease is real too. The palace is not a lie because she feels doubt inside it. The husband is not cruel because he is hidden. Psyche is not faithless because she longs to see. The sorrow of the tale grows from the fact that every heart in it holds a partial truth. Eros is right that the sisters will bring danger. Psyche is right that love without a face asks much of a mortal mind. The sisters are wrong in their envy, but they touch a fear that was already waiting. This is how doubt often enters us, not as a stranger, but as an answer to something we have not been able to say aloud. When the sisters return, they do not invent Psyche's uncertainty. They feed it. They give it images. They turn the unseen into a monster. They make the darkness seem not sacred, but threatening. Their questions are like drops of cold water on a sleeping flame. What if he is hiding because he must hide? What if tenderness is only a disguise? What if trust is another name for helplessness? The story does not ask us to hate the sisters simply. Envy has made them cruel, but envy itself is often born from old hunger. They too have been measured in relation to Psyche's beauty. They too have lived under the shadow of comparison. They see the palace and feel the wound of all they do not have. Their failure is that they choose to pass the wound onward rather than let it heal. This is one of the oldest human tragedies. Pain becomes a gift we should never have received, and then, if we are not careful, a gift we pass to someone else. Psyche's lamp is therefore filled not only with oil, but with every voice she has heard. Her parents' grief, the oracle's terror, the sisters' warnings, her husband's secrecy, her own loneliness. When she lifts it, she lifts the whole confusion of her life. That is why the drop of oil matters so much. It is small, almost nothing. A bead of heat falling from a trembling lamp. Yet small things can carry the full weight of a broken vow. In some lives, it is a sentence said too quickly. In others, a letter opened, a promise delayed, a silence where truth should have been. The old tale chooses oil because it belongs to the lamp itself. The instrument of seeing becomes the instrument of wounding. Still, the sight she gains is not false. She truly sees Eros. She sees that love was beautiful. She sees that fear has misled her. She sees the cost of not trusting. Revelation and loss arrive together. This is why the scene remains so haunting. If she had never looked, she might have kept happiness without understanding it. Because she looked, she lost it, but she also came to know what she loved. The wandering after Eros leaves is the part of the story that turns Psyche from beloved into seeker. Before she was carried, she was brought by wind, served by unseen hands, visited by a hidden god. After the lamp, she walks. Her feet touch dust. Her body tires. The world becomes ordinary again. And in that ordinariness, the soul begins its labor. This walking is important. Psyche cannot remain forever in the room where trust was broken. She cannot live beside the overturned lamp, rehearsing the moment until memory becomes a prison. She must step outside. Many stories would let a lost woman be rescued at once. This one makes her move through the world. It grants dignity to the search. Love is not restored by wishing alone. It is restored, if it is restored, through motion, humility, and the courage to face the one we have offended. When she comes to Aphrodite, she comes not as a rival, but as a supplicant. Yet Aphrodite does not welcome the transformation. The goddess still sees the old insult. She sees the mortal girl whom people call divine. She sees the wound to her honor, and perhaps underneath, the fear every power has when its power seems to be replaced. It is not easy, even for gods, to distinguish justice from revenge when pride has been hurt. The tasks Aphrodite gives are impossible by design. They are meant to prove that Psyche is unworthy. But the deeper rhythm of myth turns punishment into initiation. Each task teaches what the soul must learn. The seeds teach discrimination. A confused life must be sorted before it can be offered. Psyche cannot love wisely if all things inside her remain mixed together: fear mistaken for intuition, curiosity mistaken for courage, longing mistaken for need, shame mistaken for truth. The ants do not remove the task. They show how it can be done, grain by grain, patiently, with help from humble powers usually overlooked. There is comfort in the ants. They are not grand. No god descends in thunder. No hero arrives with a sword. The smallest creatures of the earth become the first rescuers of the soul. In a sleep story, this matters. It tells us that healing need not always feel magnificent. Sometimes it is a quiet procession of tiny obediences. A cup washed, a breath taken, a sentence forgiven, a single thought placed where it belongs. The golden fleece teaches timing. The shining prize is real, but the direct path to it is dangerous. If Psyche rushes at the rams in the heat of noon, she will be broken. The reed's wisdom is simple. Wait. There are conflicts that cannot be entered while they are burning. There are conversations that must wait until the heat leaves the blood. There are desires that can be gathered safely only after pride has gone to sleep. Notice also that Psyche gathers wool from thorns. The gold she brings back has been left behind where the fierce animals brushed against the world. She receives what remains, not by conquest, but by attention. This too is a form of maturity. Not every treasure is meant to be seized from the living creature. Some treasures are gathered from the edges after time has passed, from the branches that held what anger shed. The water of the Styx teaches limits. Psyche climbs as far as she can, and then she cannot go farther. This is not failure, it is truth. The eagle does what she cannot. In many lives, one of the hardest lessons is to accept that the soul's journey is not a proof of total self-sufficiency. Psyche is brave, but she is not winged. She is devoted, but she is not able to grasp every black spring by herself. The vessel is filled because help comes from above. The eagle belongs to Zeus, the high god, the one whose sky sees the whole pattern. Its descent suggests that Psyche's story has begun to matter beyond Aphrodite's anger. The heavens are watching. A mortal girl's persistence has entered divine attention. This does not make the path easy, but it means the path is no longer hidden. Then comes the descent, the deepest task. Every soul that loves must in some way learn to approach the underworld. Not necessarily the land of the dead in literal form, but the interior country where loss lives, where old grief sits in shadow, where everything unfinished waits with quiet hands. Psyche goes there not as a conqueror, but as a messenger carrying a box. The tower's instructions are severe because the underworld is not a place for improvisation. Take the coins, take the cakes. Do not linger. Do not accept the soft seat. Do not eat the rich food. In other words, remember your purpose. Respect the powers below, but do not become their guest forever. There is a difference between visiting grief and making a home in it. Persephone is the perfect queen for Psyche to meet. She too was once taken from one life into another. She too knows the split between upper world and lower world, between flowers and pomegranates, between maidenhood and sovereignty. She does not need to speak much. Her presence is enough. She places beauty, or the appearance of beauty, into the box and gives Psyche permission to return. In that exchange, two feminine powers stand in contrast. Aphrodite's beauty is bright, exposed, sea foam, desire, the glance that begins longing. Persephone's beauty is hidden, inward, seasonal, the beauty of survival beneath snow. Psyche is sent from one to the other, from surface radiance to depth radiance. She is learning that beauty has more than one kingdom. But at the threshold of success, she opens the box. This final mistake is heartbreaking because it is so tender. Psyche does not open it to defy the gods for pleasure. She opens it because she still believes she must improve herself before love can look at her again. She has not yet fully understood that the soul does not need borrowed radiance to be worthy of love. She thinks Persephone's secret can cover the dust of the road. Many hearts know this temptation. After hardship, we want to return flawless. We want no one to see the exhaustion, the fear, the marks of the descent. We want to bring back a perfected version of ourselves, polished and ready, as if love will only receive us when the journey has left no trace. But a love that cannot see the road on us is not the love Psyche has been seeking. So the box gives her sleep instead of beauty. It is almost merciful. The soul that has tried to become worthy by one more act of grasping is finally made still. Psyche can do nothing. She cannot sort, gather, climb, descend, explain, apologize, or beautify herself. She can only lie there in the open air, stopped at last. Eros finds her there. This is the reversal that gives the tale its tenderness. Earlier, Psyche found Eros asleep and wounded him with the lamp. Now Eros finds Psyche asleep and wakes her with care. The two scenes answer one another. In the first, seeing without trust wounds love. In the second, seeing with compassion restores the soul. He does not ask why she opened the box before he helps her. He does not lecture her while she lies helpless. He removes the sleep. That is not the same as saying every wound disappears. Myths are wiser than that. Trust once broken must be transformed, not merely reset. But Psyche has been transformed by the road, and Eros has been transformed by loss. Their love can now leave secrecy. It can enter the open court of Zeus. It can be acknowledged before the gods. Zeus's decision may seem like a convenient ending, but it also marks a change of order. What began as private desire and divine jealousy becomes a public union between love and soul. Psyche cannot remain a mortal hidden in a valley. Eros cannot remain a secret night visitor. Aphrodite cannot keep revenge as the final law. The cosmos itself must make room for what has happened. Ambrosia passes Psyche's lips and mortality loosens. The soul becomes deathless. That is the old symbolic gleam of the story. Psyche, whose name already meant soul and breath, is not destroyed by beauty, fear, desire, or descent. She is deepened. The butterfly emerges not because the cocoon was easy, but because transformation required enclosure, darkness, and patience. And hedon, pleasure, is born. This last detail is easy to pass over too quickly, but it is luminous. Love alone, when unjoined to soul, can be restless, piercing, and secretive. Soul alone, when untouched by love, can be lonely, admired perhaps, but cold. When love and soul are reconciled, their child is pleasure, not shallow amusement, not the glittering distraction that vanishes by morning. Pleasure is harmony. Pleasure is the body's sigh when fear leaves. Pleasure is bread after hunger, water after heat, a face seen without hiding, a lamp no longer used to betray but to bless. In the old Roman version, the child is called voluptas. The name carries sweetness, delight, the fullness of enjoyment. In Greek, hedone gives us the same tender idea. The myth does not end with duty alone. It does not say that Psyche's reward is only survival or only status among the gods. It says that after the long road, joy is born. That is worth remembering before sleep. Some roads are not meant to end in grim endurance. Some roads pass through endurance toward gentleness. Psyche does not walk through darkness, so that darkness may have the last word. She walks through it until love can stand in daylight, until the soul can be received openly, until pleasure can be born without shame. Before we let the last images fade, there is one more softness hidden in the name Psyche. The word does not belong only to temples and books. It is breath. It is the small, unseen movement that proves a body is alive. It is also butterfly, the winged creature that seems made from the memory of a flower. In Greek art, Psyche is sometimes shown with butterfly wings, delicate and translucent, as though the soul itself was something that could be bruised by a careless hand and yet still rise into light. This makes her kin to Eros, who also has wings. Love and soul are both winged powers, but they do not fly in the same way at first. Eros flies quickly, striking, vanishing, crossing distances in an instant. Psyche's wings, if we imagine them, come slowly. They are earned through change. She begins earthbound, carried by Zephyrus because she cannot yet carry herself. By the end, she is made immortal, not merely transported, but transformed. The butterfly image also remembers darkness. Before the winged creature opens itself to air, it passes through a hidden enclosure. It dissolves from one form toward another. It waits in a chamber that looks, from outside, like stillness. Psyche's enchanted sleep beside the road is not only punishment, it is chrysalis. She has done all that effort can do. Now something in her must be remade without her command. Sleep itself becomes sacred here, not the sleep of escape, but the sleep after trial, when the soul has no more speeches to make. Night receives what daylight cannot repair. Beneath sleep, fear loosens. Beneath sleep, the body remembers that it was made not only to strive, but to be held by rhythms older than thought. Psyche sleeps, and while she sleeps, love returns. For a listener near rest, this is a gentle image to keep. You do not need to finish every task while awake. You do not need to sort every seed before morning. There are ants that work in darkness. There are reeds that keep wisdom by the water. There are winds that know the path down from the mountain. There are parts of the soul that heal when the mind stops standing guard. The myth also speaks softly about curiosity. It does not flatten curiosity into sin. Without curiosity, Psyche would remain obedient but unknowing. With curiosity, she wounds the one she loves and begins the road that makes her more than a hidden bride. This is uncomfortable but true to life. The soul grows not only by doing right, but also by discovering the cost of its mistakes. Some doors should not be opened, yet the opening teaches what no warning could teach. The task afterward is not to hate the hand that opened them, but to learn how to hold a lamp with reverence. A lamp can betray, and a lamp can bless. In Psyche's chamber, the lamp exposes what should have waited. At the end of our telling, the lamp does something different. It does not pry, it accompanies. It gives enough light to see the path of the story, then accepts that darkness also has a place. A sleep story needs this kind of lamp. It shines, then withdraws. It does not demand wakefulness forever. There is also mercy in the fact that Eros must go to Zeus. Love by itself cannot settle everything. Passion can wound, forgive, and return, but a life needs order too. The gods gathered in council represent the wider world in which private love must find a lawful place. Psyche and Eros cannot live forever in secret rooms and night visits. Their union must be brought into daylight, recognized by heaven, made stable enough for joy to be born. Aphrodite's place at the end is important as well. She is not destroyed. She is not humiliated beyond repair. The goddess of beauty remains the goddess of beauty. But her anger is bounded. The story does not end by denying her power, it ends by placing that power within a larger harmony. Beauty is not allowed to devour the soul. Desire is not allowed to remain secret forever. Jealousy is not allowed to be the final word. Perhaps Aphrodite, in time, could look at Psyche differently. The old tale does not linger there, but the night may imagine it gently. A goddess who has seen countless lovers begin and fail might one day recognize in Psyche not a rival, but a daughter by ordeal. The mortal girl, once mistaken for beauty itself, has learned beauty's cost. She has descended farther than worshippers ever see. She has returned with a face changed by knowledge. Such beauty no longer steals from Aphrodite. It deepens the world over which Aphrodite reigns. And Eros too is changed. At the beginning he hides, he loves, but he does not reveal. He asks trust while withholding the fullness of truth. After Psyche's journey, he must love in the open. He must advocate for her before Zeus. He must let the private tenderness of night become a marriage seen by the gods. Love matures when it can stand in daylight without losing its mystery. Psyche is changed most of all. She begins as one acted upon, admired, worshipped, promised by oracle, carried by wind, housed by magic, warned by others. She ends as one who has acted, searched, served, sorted, waited, climbed, descended, returned. Even her final failure belongs to her own hand. By the time immortality comes, she is no longer merely beautiful. She is storied. She carries within her the mountain, the palace, the lamp, the road, and the underworld. This is why the tale can be dark and still comforting. Darkness is not presented as meaningless. Each shadow has a chamber inside it, and each chamber changes the one who passes through. The mountain gives surrender, the palace gives tenderness, the lamp gives knowledge, the road gives humility, the tasks give patience, the underworld gives depth, the sleep gives surrender again deeper than before, the waking gives grace. If you imagine Psyche after all this, do not imagine her shining with a simple, untouched radiance. Imagine her calm. Imagine her with eyes that know both fear and mercy. Imagine Eros beside her, no longer only the hidden visitor, but the beloved who has learned that secrecy cannot be a home forever. Imagine their child pleasure, not laughing loudly in a banquet hall, but breathing quietly in a cradle, while the gods, for once, keep their voices low. This is the final mood of the myth. Not triumph like a trumpet, not victory like a spear raised over a field. It is restoration. A door opened, a cup offered, a bride no longer abandoned on a mountain, a soul no longer mistaken for a statue, love no longer fleeing from the lamp, beauty no longer demanding that the mortal girl be crushed beneath it. So as sleep approaches, let the story become simpler. A girl was lonely. A god loved her in the dark. Fear made her lift a lamp, loss made her walk, work made her humble, descent made her deep, sleep made her still, love woke her, and the soul lived. Now the lamp is lower still. Its light no longer reaches the far corners of the chamber. The pillars have become shadows. The bronze bowl glows only at the rim. Beyond the curtains, the night has softened from vastness into shelter. The story has spent its sorrow and its gold. Psyche has crossed the mountain, the palace, the road, the tasks, the river, the underworld, and the sleep beside the path. You may let each image drift away in its own time. Let the city of worship fade first, with its incense and murmuring crowds. Let the mountain fade, and the bridal veil moving in the wind. Let Zephyrus fade, that kind, invisible current beneath a falling life. Let the hidden palace fade, with its music in empty rooms and its bed kept by darkness. Let the sisters fade, carrying their envy back up the mountain like a secret weight. Let the lamp in Psyche's hand fade, not with blame, but with understanding. Let Eros's wings fade into the night that first took him away. Let the roads fade, the dust, the temples, the bowed head before Aphrodite. Let the ants fade into the earth, each one still carrying its little seed of order. Let the reeds fade beside the river, whispering patience. Let the rams sleep in the shade, their golden wool caught harmlessly on thorns. Let the eagle fade into the high air, lifting the crystal vessel where no human hand could reach. Let the tower fade, its stone voice giving instructions to the desperate. Let the ferryman fade on the dark river. Let the honeyed cakes fade at the gate. Let Persephone fade on her throne. Winter beautiful and calm. Let the box close. Let the sleep return to where it belongs. Let Eros kneel beside Psyche and wake her once. and then let even that image grow soft. Let Zeus's hall fade, and the cup of ambrosia and Aphrodite's anger dissolving at the edge of necessity. Let the child named pleasure sleep. Nothing more is required of Psyche tonight. Nothing more is required of you. The story has done what a night story should do. It has carried fear without sharpening it. It has carried sorrow without leaving you alone inside it. It has shown the soul losing, walking, learning, descending, resting, and being found. Now only the smallest flame remains. It bends once, it gathers itself. It brightens for a final breath, as if remembering all it has illuminated, the face of a mortal girl, the wing of a god, the dust of the road, the dark water, the queen below, the sleep, the waking. Then the lamp goes out, not suddenly, but tenderly, leaving only the calm dark, and the quiet knowledge that even through shadow, the soul can find its way home. Good evening and welcome back one last time to the slow, gentle work of letting the story rest. Get cozy, settle in, and let us begin the long lowering of the lamp. The tale of Psyche and Eros has been carried by many tongues across the ages, by brides at the threshold, by mothers releasing daughters, by every soul who has ever loved something it could not yet see in full light. In the beginning, before any of these tellings, there was only a quieter rumour of the lamp and the long descent of the soul, a feeling that love asked for trust before it asked for sight, and that the soul could be sent through impossible tasks and yet not be lost. The old poets later gave it names. They gave it Psyche, Eros, Aphrodite, and the child named Pleasure who was born at the end. They gave it the long stillness in which it now rests. But that is a story for another day. For now, remember this. Tonight, the work of the tale is done. It simply was, like all old stories, the carrying of the soul's long apprenticeship to love through the long inheritance of nights. Let the names settle. Let the room settle. Let the night gather you up. Imagine the dark palace and the small bronze lamp far behind you, the trials of the soul and the long descent no longer pressing on your thoughts. In your mind, reach back and close an invisible door to the soul's journey, feeling it move on silent hinges, sealing the lamp, the seed, and the gathered tasks in calm and order. Then see a single candle, its flames steady in the darkness. With a slow, gentle breath, blow that candle out, and let the last curl of light fade into the night. Rest well, sleep deeply, and let the ancient stories carry you into the night.